Professor Rashid Khalidi received his Bachelor's of Arts degree from Yale and his PhD from Oxford. He is a historian. Professor Khalidi is the Edward Said Professor of Arab Studies at Columbia, and he is a well-known academic and political commentator. He's a significant contributor to the debate on Palestine and Israel, the conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis, and U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. He was an advisor to the late Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat, and is the author of several scholarly books, papers, articles, and chapters in edited books, Resurrecting Empire and many others. His latest work is the formation and development of Palestinian national identity and community. And his latest book, to be released next month, is Sowing Crisis, the Cold War and American Dominance in the Middle East. Professor Khalidi is the advisor to the Palestinian delegation, was the advisor to the Palestinian delegation to the Madrid and Washington peace negotiations in 1991 and 1993. He has been a member of the Council on Foreign Relations in New York since 1999. And from 1995 to 2004, he was the president of the American Committee on Palestinian-American Task Force on Palestine. It's my great honor to present to you Professor Rashid Khalidi. Thank
you. Thank you all for coming. Like Naomi, I am not a lawyer. I'm not a member of the Lawyers Guild, though some of my best friends are lawyers. My daughter's sitting for the bar next month, actually. You can tell I'm not a member of the Lawyers Guild by the fact that I'm the only person in this room with a tie on. But I know the Lawyers Guild well, and I enormously respect its work. I'm going to be talking about the current crisis in Gaza, and I'll try and focus on some ways in which I think law is important. Anybody who's been able to pay careful attention to this war on Gaza, a phase of which ended a few days ago, will have noticed that this conflict seemed to take place in two parallel universes. The first universe was that of the US media and American official and political discourse. In this hermetically sealed world, the Gaza conflict was a simple case of self-defense against a terrorist group that indiscriminately targeted civilians and was fully, wholly, and entirely responsible for all the consequences that flowed from this righteous and fully justified response to wanton aggression that Israel participated in. That was the basic message that flowed in the news and commentary columns of the New York Times, on the screens whence the wisdom of CNN, Fox, and MSNBC was dispensed, and from the mouths of our politicians. In this universe, there was scrupulous attention to the casualties and damage resulting from Hamas rocket fire against communities across southern Israel. And we all heard ceaselessly the mantra comparing these attacks to similar hypothetical attacks from Tijuana against San Diego, or from Vancouver against Seattle, or from El Paso, Juarez against El Paso. You can fill in the blanks. Little doubt and less dissent managed to work its way into this seamless, all-American, all-Israeli narrative. It was made all the more seamless by the convenient fact that several months earlier, Israel had used its complete control of access to the Gaza Strip to exclude the entire foreign press corps. There was not one non-Arab journalist in the Gaza Strip on the 27th of December. Not one. This action relieved American journalists of the burden of having direct access to a narrative that would contradict the one provided by the spokespersons of the Foreign Ministry of Israel and the Israeli military. Many of these spokespersons, the Israeli press told us, were carefully chosen to be attractive women, many of them blonde, and all of them spoke perfectly modulated English in American, British, South African, Australian, or soft Israeli accents. That was universe number one. There was, of course, another universe than that of the American media and American political discourse where this war was concerned. It was composed of the rest of the world, including not just the Arab and Islamic countries, but the rest of Asia, all of Africa, as well as Europe, Latin America, Canada, Australia, and even Israel. In this other universe, the narrative propagated by the Israeli government, which was ubiquitous in the United States, was of course widely disseminated. You could see Israeli spokesmen on Al Jazeera in Arabic nightly. You couldn't hear Hamas spokesmen on American television ever. But this other world provided an entirely different version of reality, a version totally opposed to the one that was available in the United States. This other version of reality stressed a number of things, among them the fact that the picture of events before the fighting started in earnest on December 27, 2008, was much more complex than the Israeli version would have it, that the 6-month truce that ended on December 19th was supposed to include a lifting by Israel of its hermetic blockade of the 1.5 million people of the Gaza Strip, a blockade that was never lifted. And finally, that the truce itself was first broken by an Israeli attack on November 4th, followed by another attack on November 5th. Most strikingly, this alternative view in this parallel universe that included everybody in the world except the population of the United States lay emphasis on the impact of the use of battlefield weapons like warplanes, attack helicopters, heavy artillery, and tanks. Weapons designed to be used on battlefields against other armies, I stress. On one of the most heavily populated areas in the world, 55% of whose population is made up of children. This alternate version of reality therefore focused in sometimes gruesome detail on the over 6,000 Palestinian casualties, more than 1,200 of whom were killed, and the fact that the overwhelming majority of these victims were civilians and non-combatants, and that approximately 300 of them were children. This version of events was supported, powerfully supported, by striking photographic and televised images that were largely absent from US TV screens. By their sheer striking power, however, a few of these images soon began to work their way onto the front pages of the American press. The New York Times and the Washington Post ended up publishing some of these very striking images. This was a case in the rest of the world, yet again in the history of this conflict, of images which contained an essential truth, trumping words which conveyed a base lie. Moving from one of these worlds, one of these parallel worlds, to another could be disconcerting and even depressing. Anybody who was able to have access to any foreign news source during the war would understand what I mean.